Every journey comes to an end, and the end of a journey also means the beginning of a new one. So congrats! You just finished your ayahuasca or some other medicine journey and went back home ready to live your new life with new goals, new habits, new realizations, and a new version of yourself. The end of that journey means the beginning of a new one called integration. What's that? That's exactly what we will be covering today. We will talk about what it is, how to do it properly, how to maximize the results of the ceremony, what are the most common challenges, and last but not least, why this is the most important aspect of any ceremony with any psychedelic, whether that is ayahuasca or some other mind-altering substance. This is probably one of the most important videos that I will ever record, even in years to come. That's how important integration is. So, if you know of anyone who has done a ceremony recently or any other psychedelic experience, consider sharing this video with them. So, let's get right into it. What's up? I'm Ivan, with over a decade of experience as a facilitator of ceremony, and today I would like to share all the insights that I gathered after seeing thousands of people go through the process of integration. This is extremely important because when people go home without any guidance on how to approach their integration process or what to expect of it, the chances of crashing against a wall are pretty high. This happens because people usually go home feeling really excited, feeling great, feeling inspired, ready to make all of these changes, and that can change pretty quickly. If you are not prepared for that change, you can land in a really dark place. So today, let's explore everything related to integration. As I mentioned, this is potentially one of the most important videos I will ever record, and I highly encourage you to share it with those people who have undergone an ayahuasca or any other psychedelic experience or are planning on doing one soon. Even though I usually talk about ayahuasca, you can change that word for whichever ceremony, medicine, or psychedelic experience you have done. All of these will still apply. It even applies to life without having consumed any substance. First, I would like to address why I'm doing this video and why it's so important. And that is because most ceremonies don't have an integration resource. They let you go and now deal with your life without any guidance on the complexities of managing everything that's going to happen to you after such a powerful experience. The beautiful things, the hardships, the ego trips, the confusing moments, the parts of you that you thought that you healed, but later on you realize you didn't. The need for support. Think about it in this way. These medicines come from the jungle, and originally they were served in community. Once you had the experience, you wouldn't fly back home. You would stay in that same community, being supported by those experienced people who know exactly what you're going through after such a powerful experience. In the jungle, drinking this medicine for the first time was considered an initiation, and it continues to be considered as such in many indigenous communities. So for many of you, this will also feel like an initiation, but then you will have no support when you go back into your everyday life. In fact, what you might get is the exact opposite of support. People might judge you, reject you, not understand you, and leave you to integrate all of this all by yourself. And that is not how it's supposed to be. And that's exactly why I am making this video. It is an attempt to support all of you out there who have done an ayahuasca or any other psychedelic experience, but have not been given the right integration resources or don't have the appropriate community to share this with. So let's first cover the basics. What is integration? It is the ongoing process of assimilating, making sense of, and applying the insights, emotions, and experiences gained during your journey into your everyday life. This process is not about the experience, but about how it can be meaningfully integrated into one's personal growth, relationships, behaviors, and overall well-being. For some people, this process is completely effortless and they don't even notice it. But for some others, it can be pretty challenging, having to work with counselors or therapists or integration coaches as a form of supporting the person in translating the insights into sustainable changes and growth. Today, I will be mainly covering the most common challenges that people go through during their integration process. The intention of this video is to give you all the tools needed to deal with this process at home. It is a manual on how to deal with life after ceremony. The first thing that we will cover, and probably the most important one, is what to expect when you go back home. This is one of the most crucial aspects of the integration process, which is expectations, which, funny enough, is also one of the most crucial aspects going into the ceremony. If you go home without the following information, if you are not aware of what can happen, When those things happen, they can catch you by surprise, and that can be pretty intense and difficult. Since you will be alone at home, you will not be supported by those people in the ceremony, and that can make this process even harder to do all by yourself. So after the ceremony is over, it is very common to feel amazing, free, in awe, strong, motivated, inspired to make changes, or to stop that bad habit that you have struggled for so long. You might also leave feeling a lot of gratitude, or that you finally learned how to deal with life's biggest challenges, and so you're ready to take on all of them exactly as they come. Or you might even leave feeling grateful for your trauma that has led you to how good it feels to release it. In summary, you can leave feeling that you are somewhat invincible, that you are this sort of superhuman that now knows exactly how to deal with any form of challenge that life throws at you. You're even excited to test it all out. The internal attitude is one that I call, bring it on. Now I saw exactly what alcohol does to me and why I was doing it. I love myself now, so I am done. Bring me all the bottles and see how I say no to all of them without any effort. Bring it on. My trauma was to never ask for help because I never got it as a child, but now I resolved that. I can't wait to go out into the world and show to myself how easy it is to ask for help. Bring it on. I learned how to forgive my dad despite him beating me with a belt every week. I know now that he just didn't know any better. I am so ready to listen to him, even if he doesn't understand me, because I have so much compassion for him. I love him so much. I can't wait to restart my life with my father. Bring it on. You might be feeling so many other things, like you're with God now and you will never be disconnected from the divine ever again, or that you're out of a cage that you have been trapped in for many years without even knowing. These feelings are great, enjoy them, but it is important to know one thing. You are not feeling this way because you have done ayahuasca. You feel this way because that's how it feels like to heal, whether that is to release trauma, to forgive yourself, to remove shame, to reconnect with the divine, or to puke out your addictions. In order to heal, you first need to get wounded. So, in order to feel liberated, you first need to feel prisoner of your wounds, even if you are not aware of them. Think about it in this way. If you get wounded and heal immediately, you will not feel the same kind of liberation that you would feel after years or maybe even decades of being caged by your trauma and then finally releasing it. So I must repeat this again. These feelings we talked about are not the consequence of drinking ayahuasca, they are the consequence of healing, of being in prison for a very long time and then finally be freed from it. If you would have done the same exact healing with any other methodology, you would feel the same way. Now, why do I insist in this so much? Because people might feel that it was ayahuasca that made them feel this way, and then feel inclined to go back to feel this way instead of simply to focus on their healing. But these feelings of liberation and inspiration eventually disappear. Why is that? Going back to the previous analogy, imagine that you have been in prison for a very, very long time, maybe decades. The day that you are released, you will appreciate every single step that you're making out of prison. You will be like, oh my god, I can walk freely. Oh my god, I can walk in the park and smell the fresh air. Oh my god, I can go to any restaurant and eat whatever I want. Oh my god, I can see my friends. In this state, nothing might bother you. You will be fine sitting in traffic. You're free, who cares? You might even enjoy traffic, saying hi to every driver. Somebody honks at you and gives you the middle finger, and you honk back out of joy. Oh my god, what a state to be in. It's so good to be alive. Now, do you think that that state will last forever? After 10 years, traffic might make you angry again, and going to any restaurant might not feel as special. Maybe little tiny things might start annoying you, or you will not notice every single tree as that first walk in the park right after prison. Is this because you really have not left prison? Of course not. You left prison. What happened is that eventually you got used to your new normal. The key word here is normal. Whether it is an old or a new normal, they both feel normal once you get completely used to those things. The day you get released from prison doesn't feel normal, and maybe it will not feel normal for a very long time, but eventually it does, and normal feels like normal. However, your new normal is much better than the old one, even if you are used to it. The same exact thing happens with healing. In order to heal, you need to get traumatized first. Going back to the last analogy, being trapped under your trauma is like the prison, and healing, which means to get liberated from your trauma, is like being released from prison. At first, it feels amazing, but eventually, at some point, you will get used to it. Now, does that mean that your healing wasn't real? Of course not. Your healing was real. If you forgave your dad, you forgave your dad. If you reconnected with a part of your wounded inner child, now that part has reintegrated within you. But eventually you will get used to it and it will feel like normal. What you will have to do is every now and then remind yourself that your new normal is much better than the old one, which is why the writing aspect of the homework that I will be giving later in this video is so important. At first, right after a ceremony, you might not get angry at traffic and have an inner sense that you never will, in the same way as somebody just coming out of prison. But you will. I promise you, you will. For some people, that lasts a few days, for some a few weeks, and for some several months. In my case, for 6 months, I just couldn't stop smiling. I felt like life was a constant miracle at all times. Today, 10 years later, life continues to be a miracle, but I am used to it. So little stupid things bother me that didn't right after my first ceremony. If you believe that you're doing ayahuasca to feel this way, let me tell you, not only that's not the case, but it's also one of the main reasons for people's struggle right after a ceremony. From the belief that they should be feeling amazing all the time, and then those feelings disappearing. Since feeling great can last a very long time, that can also reinforce the idea that those feelings will last forever. As long as you're doing ayahuasca as a form of chasing those amazing feelings, then you will continue to feel disappointed when those feelings go away. And so many mistaken thoughts can show up because of that. For example, the healing I did was not real, or I'm unfixable, or something must be really wrong with me because I did ayahuasca 5 times and I'm still depressed, or I was just tripping and that's why I thought I could deal with my abusive father, but actually it's all a lie. This won't only make it very challenging to deal with on your own, but also it might discourage you from doing healing work again from the belief that true healing isn't real. If that belief is there with you right now or it has been in the past, know that is happening most likely because of the expectations you had about how you should feel after ceremony not matching how you actually felt. But the problem there was not how you felt, it was the expectations, and fortunately that is much easier to change. Since healing is an ongoing process, in order to keep feeling those beautiful feelings of freedom, you need to keep the ongoing process of liberating yourself from all the different cages that we are in, also known as continue doing healing work. So to summarize this point, just remember, you don't do ayahuasca to feel great. You do it to heal, so that your new normal is better than your old one. So that you don't act upon your trauma and can't touch people with a healing hand and not a wounded one. So that you don't pass your trauma into your children, leaving them with less work to do and breaking the cycle of wounding. Feeling great can happen as a consequence, but take it more as a side effect that will likely happen. Most times after finishing a ceremony, you will feel great. Sometimes you finish a ceremony and you don't, but this does not mean that the healing was not real. If you're attached to feeling great, if that is the feeling that you're chasing, you will be disappointed after a ceremony and, even worse, at yourself. So now let's ask the question, why do we sometimes not feel great after a ceremony? That's because either the process was not completed and you need to complete it later, or it was completed but it has not been yet integrated, which is what this whole video is about. Or maybe it is completed and integrated, but this specific process was not one that brought feelings of liberation. This can happen if whatever you healed in that specific ceremony is not associated directly with feelings that normally make you feel trapped. Sometimes we do heal things that don't bring the feelings of liberation or gratitude as a consequence. So detach from the idea of how you should feel and just simply notice how you're feeling. If you feel great, enjoy it, and if you don't, that's okay. You weren't doing ayahuasca to feel great anyway, right? Alright, let's move now into the second stage of this integration talk, which I call ambassadors of possibility, which is another common reason of why sometimes people struggle after a ceremony. Another reason why you might feel super inspired, like an invincible superhuman, is because ayahuasca and many other psychedelics sometimes act as what I call ambassadors of possibility. In simple terms, they can show you what's out there, what is possible in your life in order to inspire you and get you going. This is very commonly confused as if the plants would have already done those things for you. Here is an analogy. We're walking, minding our own business, and then we come to the base of a mountain. A little sign there says, "Welcome to the tallest mountain in the world." To climb this mountain will take a few decades. There are some resting stops every few days of climbing. Then we casually look at each other and I say, "Let's go up." Then you would be like, "Are you crazy? It says it will take decades to go up there. Why would I do that?" Then I would say, I don't know. Maybe what's up there is everything that we've ever been looking for. And then you would say, "Maybe, but how could I be sure?" The only way I would go up the tallest mountain in the world is if someone can guarantee that up there I will find exactly what I always wanted. Otherwise, it is not worth risking going all the way up there without knowing why are we even doing it or what we will find. Ayahuasca, many times, that's exactly that. She holds your hand and teleports you to the top. Then you see what's up there, and it is much better than anything you could have ever imagined, way worth the effort of getting there. She tells you, if you start doing all the needed healing work, you will get to this place. And then she teleports you back at the base of the mountain and says, "Now you do it." Now that you know what's up there, you do have a motivation to start the journey, as it feels like no other journey is more important, that any other journey would be just a waste of time in comparison. So, where is the issue here? When people are placed artificially at the top of the mountain by the psychedelic experience, many times they get confused, believing that they already arrived. I sometimes fall for this too, even still today. And then when they are put back at the base, the feeling healing isn't real shows up because they believe that everything that they saw at the top of the mountain already happened. Instead, what really happened is that now you know what's possible and why it is so worth starting the journey. Confusing what is possible with what already happened can feel like a big crash once you realize it. So that's a theory. Now let's bring practicality to this analogy. To do that, we need to talk about what the mountain represents, what the journey up there entails, and what is the thing that you will find at the top. Examples help ground theory so nicely, right? So let's go to the following example in which your dad has been abusive to you as a child and still till today he has no space to receive you or for you to share anything with him vulnerably. You're holding a lot of unprocessed emotions from childhood. Anger, resentment, fear, hopelessness, helplessness, and many others. Most of these emotions you don't know you're holding. They are unaware. Then you drink ayahuasca and all of a sudden she puts you in a place where you can see your dad through the most tender parts of your compassionate heart. You feel exactly how free and light you would feel if you would just simply let go of your resentment and forgive him. You experience the liberation of those feelings and how awesome life will feel like afterward. It all feels so great and liberating that an obvious question shows up. Why wouldn't I just simply let go of my resentment and forgive him for what he's done? I could just see him with these compassionate eyes from now on, and our relationship will be fixed and I will be able to live my best life. What? What he did to me when I was a kid? Pfft, that was so long ago. I'm just so ready to forgive him. Dad, I forgive you. Ah, that feels amazing. My heart is so open. I'm free. When I get home, I will be able to say all of these things to him and I will have my relationship with him back. It will all be so healthy and beautiful and awesome. And then the experience is over and you go home so excited to share your newly found freedom with your dad. But he does the usual. He has no space for you or ignores you or dismisses you. And immediately you start feeling the same kind of anger and resentment that you thought you liberated during the experience, triggered by the same person you thought you forgave. Then you feel anger or hatred or other strong feelings and your heart closes, feeling that he doesn't deserve your forgiveness. And then you crash. Everything I experienced wasn't real. It was all fake. I was just tripping. That's why I thought all of those things. My dad won't change, nor my relationship with him. So in this example, first, what represents the mountain to climb? That would be healing my relationship with my father. Second, what represents the journey of climbing to the top? And that would be accomplishing that healing using all the tools that we always talk about in this channel, like processing unprocessed emotions, doing inner child work, doing self-validation, exploring the parts of yourself that are unaware, releasing shame, etc., etc. It can be a pretty long journey. And third, what represents what you will find at the top of the mountain. And that is all of the beautiful things that you saw during the experience. Liberation, feeling light, seeing your dad through compassionate eyes, having a better relationship with him, being free of resentment, having an open heart, a readiness to live your best life, etc. So, why do we crash? That is because ayahuasca sometimes skips the second step, which is the journey to get there, and when we are artificially in that third step, we feel that the journey to get there is already done when in reality it's not. Why does she do that? For the same reason you said, I don't want to go up that huge mountain unless I know what's waiting for me there. So she skips the journey and shows you how life would be like once you have healed around this topic. Now, once the experience is over, it's not that you go back fully to step one, looking up that mountain and not knowing why should you climb it. Now that you know what's up there, you have the motivation to start the journey, and that by itself means that the journey has started and that you are in step 2. Many times, ayahuasca will assist you through that journey, helping you and guiding you through that second step. But not always. And it is important to know that even if you believe that you forgave or that you have done healing around a certain topic, healing comes by layers, and there might be another layer of healing needed around it. This doesn't mean that the layer that you did heal didn't happen. Sometimes, like in the example just given, the first step to healing is to become aware of what it will feel like once that is fully healed, so that you feel inspired to start the process. Whatever the actual next step is, that's what ayahuasca will do. If it is to become aware, then awareness it is. If it is to release certain emotions, then that is what will happen. Now, if the goal is forgiveness, forgiveness might not come for a very long time, as that is what you will find at the top of the mountain after you have done the necessary process and steps to get there. So be patient with where you're at in your healing journey, as many times you might not even know exactly in which part of the journey you are at. Wherever it is that you're at, that is exactly where you should be, and not further along. You will be further along at some point, but if you keep that same mentality, when you are at that place, you will continue to want to be further along. Not only that, but that kind of mentality can delay getting you there, while in the meantime creating a lot of suffering. Instead, know that you're exactly where you're supposed to be, stay open to see what that place is, and do your best to meet yourself where you already are at. In any case, feeling great or poorly or whichever way you're feeling after the ceremony cannot be permanent. It simply can't, because that is not part of human nature and does not match the reality we live in and through which we experience the world, which is duality. Part of living in duality is the constant change. Think about it this way. You're feeling something right now. Whatever that is, angry, happy, joyous, sad. But at some point, whenever that is, you will feel something that is not this. And so if you're feeling great, the not this basically means not great, or basically saying feeling crappy. What's interesting is that feeling crappy might have been the thing that you have been feeling for a very, very long time, but you got so used to it that you experienced it as normal. And then after a ceremony, you're experiencing not that, which in this case would mean feeling great. So whenever you feel crappy again, it might feel harder than before, because before you were used to it, and now you made feeling crappy not be normal anymore. So when you revisit the feeling, it might be much harder than before, like you just sunk into a really big hole. And when we sink into that hole, that's when we can experience that the healing was not real. It is like when you have two different flavors of ice cream, and in order to truly keep tasting both of them, you need to switch from one to the other before you get too used to one of them. The third part of this integration video is to focus on always healing and not in fully healed. It isn't being free what makes us feel liberated. Instead, it's the process of liberation, going from trapped to free. So you there right now watching this video, if you have never been to prison, then you don't know what it feels like to get liberated from it. So again, it's the process of liberation that makes us feel free. And in the same manner, the way you feel after a ceremony is the consequence of the process of healing and not healed. Whatever you have healed cannot be unhealed. However, that doesn't mean that you will feel wonderful forever, because feeling that way is a consequence of healing and not healed. This is an important distinction. As you are healing, the thing that you are releasing will make you feel liberated and lighter, and you will feel the difference in that duality, like with the ice cream flavors. But once that thing is healed, and once you get used to that thing being healed, which can take days, weeks, or even months for certain people, based on the particular thing that they have healed, then that becomes static. Healing is a moving part. It contains motion because it is a process. It is that thing that makes us feel free. And healed is static. It does not contain motion because it is not a process anymore. It is something that is already done. Once it becomes static, it is going to stop giving you the feelings that you were experiencing when it was in motion. For example, feeling great or feeling liberated or whatever that was. So if you want to be experiencing this feeling often, then you will be needing to do healing often too, using whichever methodology you want with or without psychedelics. And that is a little bit paradoxical because part of the healing journey is to not be chasing this feeling constantly. Why? Because whichever part of you is making you chase this feeling so badly is probably a part of you that also requires healing. At the same time, it is okay to want to feel this way. I enjoy it a lot when it happens. And for as long as it lasts, you get to enjoy it. Once it leaves, no, that's okay too. It was bound to happen anyway. But then at some point, it will come back again. The more you attach to it, the less that you will enjoy it while it lasts, as attaching to anything is a form of losing presence with that thing, bringing an element of fear. It is a fear that says something like, oh no, when is this going to leave? How long is this going to last? Which in turn takes you away from enjoying it and being present with it. Just keep doing healing work. Not to feel this way constantly, but because it will give you an amazing life quality. So the summary of this first part is to enjoy the afterglow for as long as it lasts and know that at some point it will go away and that's okay. And now it's time for your first piece of homework, which is write down your experience in detail, as thorough as you can, as this will bring two things. First, it will help you process your experience and have more clarity around it. Writing things down can make a big difference in our understanding of what happened and what we got out of it. Sometimes you might feel that not much has happened, and then once you start writing, you realize that you had a lot more to say than what you thought. It is important to write because you might think you remember everything, but I promise that you will start forgetting things that are important, no matter how clear they are in this moment. As you are writing, you will notice that many things that you didn't think about or realize before are now showing up in your awareness. The second reason for this homework is that writing things down will remind you in the future, whenever you feel normal again, of those amazing things that you felt that by then might start fading, or you might be feeling that they weren't as real or as important as you felt right after the ceremony. Do not skip any details. Write down everything that you felt, liked, disliked, loved or hated, what was difficult or easy, moments of pleasure or bliss, moments of pain or regret, anything that disappointed you. What did you learn, realized, healed? Who you thought you were before coming to ceremony and who you think you are now afterwards. Literally anything and everything that you can say about your experience, pretending that you will forget it completely and that you will have to remind yourself of every aspect of it using only the things that you wrote. If you can take a little bit of time during the days after the experience to do this, especially the very next day when it's fresh, there will be a point in which you will thank yourself that you did. You already took some days off out of your life to do this, right? During that time, you have been planting seeds. The integration part is when you start harvesting what you planted. Investing some time in doing this will help you get much more out of the time that you have already invested. So in the future, in 6 months or a year, or whenever you might need a refresher of the things that you felt or the things you learned, you can read it and be reminded of everything that you experienced, but now with the advantage of reading and feeling those things in the context of your everyday life, which feels very different than the one coming out of ceremony. Being reminded of your experience in this new context can be really useful to understand which parts were easy to apply and which ones were hard, helping you learn how to do so in your everyday life. I've had extremely powerful experiences that I was convinced I was never going to forget. Yet, sometimes months and maybe sometimes years later, I would have a memory of some of the sensations that I had, but not of any details. Reading what I wrote brought me straight back into them, helped me deal with whatever I was dealing in the present moment, and I got to relearn lessons that I seemed to have forgotten. Another reason to write it down is that when you read it months or years later, sometimes you can't believe that you have learned those things in a ceremony because you have this feeling that you always knew those things. This is a perfect way to know that the healing you have done was real and that you have fully integrated the lessons learned. When you read something years later and you think, "What? Did I learn that in ceremony? I thought I've always been that way." Then you know how much the ceremony has transformed your life without you even noticing it. Having the chance to notice it brings more understanding into why doing healing work is so important, and it also brings hope, showing you that your healing was real. So now let's move into the fourth part of this video, where we will cover two more very common challenges after a ceremony. The first one is to not feel great after the ceremony, and the second one is lack of community. So first, not feeling great after a ceremony. A common challenge is to leave the ceremony not feeling great when you have been promised that you are going to, or you have seen your friends feeling great afterwards, or even the people that you shared that same ceremony with feel amazing except you. Why can this happen? The most common reason to not feel great, or maybe even feeling crappy right after your ceremony, is most likely because your process has not come to full completion yet. Maybe you don't feel good out of the shock of the things that you have uncovered. Sometimes people realize the depth of their trauma during the experience, something that they didn't expect at all, and that brings a lot of unprocessed emotions and feelings to the surface. Those feelings might take some time to process, sometimes many days. So if you're leaving a ceremony not feeling great, probably what needs to happen is that everything that you experienced needs to come to full completion. And that completion sometimes can take time based on which situation you're in, what you saw during your experience, and where you're at in your particular healing journey. Try to do your best not to compare your experience with anyone else's. I know it's not easy not to compare, and it is also okay to fail at it, but at the very least, you can do your best. You are not supposed to feel the way they are feeling. You're also not supposed to feel great. Feeling great is a common consequence, but it doesn't happen necessarily every time. Sometimes we not only compare it with other people's experiences, but also with our own past ceremonies if we have done this more than once. That was my case, where the first times I did it, I just couldn't stop smiling for months in a row. So I thought that feeling that great was actually the point of partaking in ceremony. But one day I left not feeling well, and I just couldn't help but compare it with all of the other times where I did. And so that made it feel so much worse, because there was a sensation that there was something wrong with me. Something is wrong with me is a very common thought that shows up at some point during your healing journey, whether that is in a ceremony, once you leave, or a long time after. So just remember, there is nothing wrong with you. You have gone through a very powerful and intense experience, and now you're integrating it at your own pace and in your own personal way. Going through these emotions is part of the integration aspect of it. And by going through it, you will learn how to hold all the emotions that you didn't have much of a skill for and get better at it. At some point later, whether that is randomly or through a situation that triggers it, you will realize why you weren't feeling well after the ceremony. And by that point, it will most likely feel like it was worth it, as now you will understand what it has given you. That is the moment when you know that your process has finally completed. Feeling great is usually a sign of the completion of a process. So for those people who leave the ceremony feeling great, it probably means that most of the processes that they have started during the experience have completed, meaning that they fully understood what those processes were and what it has given to them. Next, I mentioned that another very common challenge is based on lack of community. People sometimes experience hardships going back to a life that they have created based on trauma throughout the years. A life that all of a sudden after a ceremony they might not resonate with anymore. Another way of saying that is that you might have created a lifestyle very slowly, including the people that you know, who your friends are, the things that you like to do, and you have healed what created that lifestyle all in one go in a weekend, and all of a sudden you feel like that lifestyle doesn't match who you are today. But the change is too sudden. Here's an example. If you love to drink, you will be surrounded by people who love to drink. That's because sometimes you might hang out in bars or invite friends for a drink, and so you will bond with those people who say yes to that, and you will not bond or even spend enough time with those people who aren't interested. Your life will then be surrounded by drinkers, and drinking will be one of the main ways in which you connect with people and have your need for belonging and community met. And then one day you do a healing journey, and in one weekend you realize where your drinking issues were coming from, how it was harming you, and you heal the trauma that you were using alcohol to numb. You find this new weird thing called self-love, and you are excited to never drink again. You feel inspired, and you don't even feel that alcohol will ever be tempting again, that it won't require any effort. And at first, that's how it goes. But then you start hanging out with your friends and there are drinks everywhere. You say, "No, I don't drink anymore." and your friends start mocking you. Who is this clone of Johnny? Oh wow, Johnny is a saint now. Hey Johnny, how many cups of soy milk are needed to have fun? Then your friends from the bar call you to go have a drink, and you say no. And then the next Sunday the game is on, and everybody that you know and love are going to get together to watch the game and have a drink. You start thinking, should I go and expose myself to it, or should I simply not go? And so you start feeling a little bit isolated and lonely, and maybe even misunderstood and judged by your own friends. And not only that, even if no one judges you and everybody supports you in your decision not to drink, hanging out with drinkers might not be what it used to anymore, because now you can see very clearly the unhealed trauma that is making them drink, and that is not something that you resonate with anymore, because now you are into diving deep into yourself and healing your wounds, and they are not. You start feeling that they are not your people, but you have no other people. You have built a life over the years where all your friends are drinkers. Or maybe even harder, maybe your wife or husband are a drinker. So what do you do now? Here is where a key moment happens. Your sense of belonging, which is one of the basic human needs, goes unmet. That can be really painful, and that is one of the common challenges of integration. From here, two paths are possible, and it is very common to take either of them. The first path is when that lack of belonging hurts so much that you ignore everything that you learn in the journey and go back to drinking just so that you can feel that you belong to a community of friends. The first few drinks and hangouts might not even feel good at all, but then at some point you will get used to it and it's as if nothing would have happened. Actually, that is not true. Even though it might feel like no healing has happened, and even though you're drinking again, now you're doing it from a place of awareness of what you're doing and how you are going against yourself. Believe it or not, that is a huge difference in comparison to just doing it the way that you've always been. Why is that? Because awareness is the first step of the healing journey. In this case, your healing journey might not be as straightforward as just simply stopping drinking, even if it felt like that at some point. But to try, fail, then become aware of the failure, and then try again from that place of awareness. So if this happened to you, I know that it can be very discouraging, but this does not mean that the healing you've done wasn't real. It only means that your healing journey might not be as straightforward as you thought, and that it might require more work, one that you are more than capable of doing. By the way, I use the example of drinking here, but this is not just for you drinkers out there. This is for all of you watching this video, and you can replace the word drinking for any other issue that you might have been dealing with, or for whichever thing you have healed during a ceremony. Another challenge around this topic is the simple concept of neuropathways already formed. Even though you might not feel like drinking anymore, habits are stored in the brain as neuropathways that are already formed and reinforced many times. So you might want to not drink, but certain environments might activate those neuropathways, making it much harder not to do it. I see this all the time, not only with drinking, but with other drugs and habits where the person is surrounded by the very thing that they are trying to detach from because they have created that lifestyle slowly over time. It might be much harder to start a new life and new habits if you're constantly surrounded by the thing that you're trying to avoid. So relapsing in these conditions can be easier. So we talked about the first path being that you go back to your old habits out of your need to belong. The second path is to learn how to hold the pain of not belonging, experiencing loneliness and other feelings that emerge from it, with determination to feel them fully until you create a new community of people. The people you don't resonate with will slowly fade out of your life simply from having different interests and not spending that much time together, until one day these people might feel completely unknown to you. And this can include, in many cases, your partner. If you start a healing journey and your partner doesn't, eventually it can happen that you grow too far apart from each other, where you give importance to aspects of life that your partner doesn't, and vice versa. This can be extremely painful and another reason to go back to old patterns so that you can have a sense of belonging at the very least with your partner. This was my case, and after a very long and tedious journey, it ended up in divorce. It was really painful at the time, but today I'm really grateful it ended up that way, because the person I am with today gives importance to the aspects of life that I started giving after embarking in my healing path, and our bond is much stronger because of it. All of this is to say how important it is to build a community of people that you feel you belong to. So, after a ceremony, it will be advisable for you to start slowly building that community, first by hanging out with the people that you had your ceremony with, and then also by going to meditation classes or yoga or Tai Chi or Qigong or ecstatic dance or any other conscious focused gathering. Until that happens, you can at least share your integration experience with the people that you share the ceremony with, because there's no other people on earth that will understand what you went through better than them. So here's where the second piece of homework comes in. Make sure that you do something every day that puts you in touch with deeper parts of you, like journaling or doing yoga or meditating or any other activity like that. That will be constantly reinforcing the feelings of well-being and how important it is to live a life where you are always, or at least very often, connected to yourself, making it much easier to create those changes that you want for your life. It will also reinforce the neuropathways that you have created during the ceremony, and those habits that were hard to detach from at some point will have no pull at all. By going to yoga, to a sound bath, or to a meditation class, you will also be creating a community of people around you that support your new lifestyle. And at some point, you will realize that all the places that you hang out in are related to a kind of life that you are much happier to be living. It's amazing what a few minutes of meditation or an hour of yoga a day can do for the rest of your waking hours. You get so much compared to how little amount of time it takes. Many ancient healing traditions and religions don't agree with psychedelics because they take you there and then they bring you back, exactly as we talked earlier about the mountain. What they say, and I totally believe in this and I am conveying this to you, is that healing is something that you do every day. You can go to a million ceremonies and they will have no effect unless you make healing an everyday practice. The ceremonies are there to guide you on how to do that, but then it is you who has to do it every day. If you don't make healing a daily practice, then you will notice a need to do more ceremonies and you will get less out of them. But make it part of your lifestyle and see your life improve in ways you could have never imagined before. Now, the third and last piece of homework is related to the diet. By going to a ceremony, you have put yourself through a very deep cleanse. It started with the diet, which, by the way, I made a video about why it is important to follow it, which you can check up here or in the description below. And then during the ceremony, you might have been purging from both sides of the pipe, but also through crying and laughing, sweating, and vomiting your unprocessed emotions. You have been pushing out all the toxic and bad stuff out of your system while creating new neuropathways around healthy habits, using a medicine that brings a lot of neuroplasticity. What this means in simple terms is that your brain becomes much more programmable, being able to establish new habits with much more ease. Children's brains are very neuroplastic, which is why they can learn things with so much ease. And these medicines bring our brains into a very similar state. So, out of all the possible times to create new habits, right after a ceremony is one of the best ones, as you are coming with the inspiration and neuroplasticity of the ceremony. It is like trying to push a car that is already moving in comparison to one that it is not. So, the last piece of your homework is to keep the diet for a few more days with the following intentions. First, to allow the medicines that will continue being active in you to keep working for a few more days. Second, for the things that we consume, like certain foods or drinks, smokes, news, products, or even relationships, to become clearer about which ones we consume and which ones consume us. In our everyday life, we don't know which one is which. Another way of saying that is that we don't know which ones we choose and which ones choose us, meaning that we have no willpower at all over them. We do them automatically, and if we ever try to stop, we then realize we actually can't. Coffee is one of the most common examples of this. If you have any addiction to anything, then it is that thing that it is choosing you, and not the other way around, as you have no sovereignty at all over the decision making. Oh my god, I need a coffee right now and there is no way I'm stopping myself from it. That doesn't sound like someone saying, yeah, I could have a coffee right now, but if I don't have it, that's totally okay. Third, a lot of our diet is trauma-based, meaning that we consume those things to soothe an unhealed wound. For example, drinking coffee from a need to constantly be performing, stemming from a childhood wound in which our parents would punish us if we would have bad grades and would reward us if we would perform well, creating an association. To perform is to be loved. So to drink coffee allows us to perform, which in turn makes us feel safer around our capacity to be loved. Now, of course, you're not thinking of all these things while you're drinking coffee. I am not saying that. But these are the underlying unconscious mechanics for a lot of people. Now, that's one out of thousands examples of how diet could be wounded based. By continuing the ayahuasca diet for a few more days after your ceremony, you are giving yourself the chance to understand which parts of your diet were based on wounding, and if you have healed that during your ceremony, you might not have the need to consume those things anymore. But you will never find that out unless you give yourself the chance of observing the results after a ceremony. For example, if you have healed the wound around not being loved when you didn't perform, then maybe you start naturally needing to perform less, and with it, your addiction to coffee reduces. Maybe even the taste isn't as good anymore, and one can ask, wait, how can the taste of something be associated with the love that I didn't get as a child? It sounds completely crazy, but that's how it works. That is because the thing that used to soothe your pain, now it's not doing its thing anymore in the places in which that pain has been healed. Now, how we will find out if that's the case if we don't give ourselves the chance of keeping the diet for a little bit longer. Now, after a few days have passed, it is okay to reintroduce some of those foods and habits. But when you do, it is important not to do it mindlessly. Rather, do it paying attention to how it makes you feel. So, not how does it taste, but does this feel good for me now? Is this updated with who I am and the awareness that I have today? Maybe it actually still tastes great, but it doesn't feel as good anymore. And that is where you're putting your focus now, on how things feel and not how they taste. And that is the body's natural mechanism of letting you know what is good for itself. In my case, certain desserts still taste good, but they are not tempting to me anymore, or at least not as much, because now my focus is in how these things make me feel. I care much more for that than for taste. And this can happen to you too. Continuing the diet for a few more days will support that. What's really beautiful about this process is that once you create that habit, the thing that is good for you ends up tasting better than the one that is not, as you start associating your taste buds with how things make you feel. When I transitioned from Coca-Cola to water when I was 13, Coke tasted much better. It was hard to transition. Water actually tasted bad to me, which sounds ridiculous, being that it is our life source. But today, I can't imagine anything tasting better than water, because how it feels is connected to my taste buds. And Coke tastes to me like poison, which it happens to be what it is. We can learn to not have to put up with the things that are good for us, but to actually want them. We can reteach those things to ourselves. And the best moments to do so are in moments of inspiration, which happens to be the state that we are in after a ceremony. Now, inspiration is not enough to go all the way, but it does help kickstart the process. To continue and finish this process, what we really need is conviction, which deep down stems from self-love. So, by the end of this process, your newly found self-love will dictate which foods are the best for you in this moment if you give it the chance to do so. The last tip is to make sure that you don't make any big decisions during or right after the ceremony. Don't quit your job. Don't break up with your boyfriend. Don't sell your house and go meditate in a cave for the next 30 years. Don't do anything rushed and don't do anything impulsive. You might be tempted to do so, as the rush of inspiration right after a ceremony can be pretty intense. But know that if you wait a few days and let the experience settle and integrate, you might make much better decisions from a wiser place. Right after a ceremony, there might be a little voice that says, "Screw Ivan and his advice, go do this right now." If that voice shows up, I recommend you to come back to this video and watch this again. The feeling that it cannot wait is actually the reason not to do it, as that feeling cannot be trusted because it is not coming from an integrated place. We are approaching the end of our integration talk. To summarize, the healing path is not a straight line. You might make many steps forward and then seemingly fall back to where you started, discouraging you about all the work that you have done. Integrating the lessons learned from a ceremony also is not a straight line, and it will most likely have many ups and downs. If you approach it in this way, when those moments come, they will not catch you by surprise, and it will be easier to take them as they come. It is okay to experience hardships after a ceremony. Those will pass. It is also okay to experience really beautiful moments after a ceremony, and those will pass too. Part of the integration of a healing journey is to focus on healing and not healed, and you don't even have to be good at it at first. Walking the path and stumbling upon some rocks is what leads us to become better at it. So do your best to treat yourself with love, care, and patience when those rocks show up on your path. Treating yourself with love and care can also be challenging, and when you don't do that, know that's okay too, as this is also something that we learn and get better at the more that we attempt it, fail at it, and try again. That is one of the many rocks that we will find along the path. Integration is the true ceremony. It is the most important part of any form of healing work, whether that is with or without psychedelics. Remember, healing is a daily practice. Don't depend on a ceremony for it. Rather, use the ceremony to learn how to do it by yourself every day. My intention with this video was to create the most complete resource on psychedelic integration, so that anybody that has done any mind-altering substance, whether that is ayahuasca or any other, has a place to come back to be reminded of the hardships that we can encounter on it, to learn how to deal with them and not get discouraged to continue doing healing work. I said this many times and I will repeat it in this video too. Healing work is really hard and it is very common to get discouraged along the way. It is part of the path, but at the end of it all, it is much harder not to do it. Since psychedelic healing is gaining momentum now, I found this to be the right time to release this resource. So if you know anybody that has done psychedelics, please consider sharing this video with them. It is very likely that they will get something out of it, even if they have not done ayahuasca or if they have done it a long time ago. If you made it this far, well, congrats! Thank you for listening to all of it. As with every video and to assist you in your healing journey, I made a really cute PDF with the summary of everything that we talked about today, so that you can refresh your memory anytime that you feel the need to revisit the topics presented. If you appreciate what I do, there are many ways in which you can support me. The one that will help me the most keep going is for you to sign up to my Patreon at any level that you want or can. You can also like this video, subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss more content like this, and share it with anybody that you think that will benefit from it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in next week's video. Click on the left square to watch another video I made on a related topic. All my content is free. If you appreciate it and wish to assist me to continue releasing this kind of content, please consider supporting me on Patreon. You can also follow me on my socials and subscribe to this channel.